Hi, this is Croft Edwards, leadership coach and leadership flow expert. And today on the Deb Barron Show, we're going to be talking about leadership flow and how to bring out the best in those around you. So stay tuned and find your flow.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to be taking a look at flow. Is it something leaders can do? And if they can, what's the impact on your business and on your leadership? If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in, we're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we are deeply grateful also to Inc.com, who made us the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. We really appreciate it. And listen, we really need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Do it now. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, or a leader in any capacity, you know there have been times when you have struggled and you have toiled over every thought and every decision and every action. But there's also been times when it's just seemed really easy, even effortless. So how can you naturally be in that flow state as a leader where it just seems to come easy? Well, stay tuned, because our guest on this episode is Croft Edwards, and he's going to talk to us about exactly that. Croft Edwards is a speaker, author, master certified coach, president of CROFT Company, which sounds like a place that would make tableware. I just made that up. He's the genius behind LeadershipFlow and the study of how to help individuals and organizations be at their best. He has been leading companies and their teams to find that flow state since 2001 in a variety of fields, wait for it, ranging from mining, refining, government agencies, sovereign nations, manufacturing, startups, small businesses, and healthcare. He is also a retired military officer, having served 20 years in the Army on both active and reserve duty. He has held leadership positions throughout his career and has an MBA and an MA in history, of all things. These experiences have helped him to understand. His latest book is entitled Leadership Flow, Perfectly Squared. It's a story about learning to lead and transforming a company. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome Croft Edwards!
Thank you. Yeah. Great to be here, Doug.
Good to have you here, my man. We've gone through our technical challenges, and it took a while to make it happen.
Yes, the last time we did this, I was in the middle of nowhere, and it showed up in our audio. Yeah.
In the middle of a field trying to pick up the Wi-Fi with the sound of the wind and donkeys or something.
Yes. But we've got that solved now.
We're solved now. We're solid. So let's jump in. Explain for our listeners, our viewers, what is flow? What does that mean?
So flow is just an awesome topic. When I came across it about 3 or 4 years ago, it just fundamentally changed my life. But the premise is, we all know flow. It's when we're at our best, when we're performing our best, when things seem effortless. And so a lot of times we see it with, athletes are in the zone. They just, one of my favorites is Steph Curry, when he's all over the map, but he just shoots and it looks effortless. But it's really coming to the forefront as a study. And it's based on some original research in the 60s, 70s, and 80s by a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And good luck trying to spell that, right? But what he found was they did this large study of happiness. Mm-hmm. And they found that people said, you know what, when I'm at my best, I was in a flow state. So they started to kind of explore this, and then that's evolved, and there's some really great cutting edge research being done because of neurotechnology and the way we're really going ahead with science and even things like GoPros. An author, Stephen Kotler, I know you've had on before, did a lot of work with extreme athletes. But fundamentally, flow is just when we're at our best. And what really piqued my interest was if somebody's at their best, what kind of results would we get from them? Well, we'd likely get their best. So really, for me, the concept of leadership flow is my goal as a leader is to bring out the best in people. And the results will follow, and they'll be through the roof, as opposed to just focusing on the results and who cares about the people. So really, it's how do I bring out the best in people so work is easy, work is fun, and they bring their best to the table.
So, as you just mentioned, Stephen has been on the show, Stephen Kotler, who is one of the guys, him and Jamie Wheel, who put together the Flow Genome Project, done great work. I'm actually working with a company here on the west coast of Canada who are doing stuff around flow states and building a flow dojo. So this is certainly a familiar subject to me, but it's interesting that you have it in the context of leadership because it doesn't seem to fit. Like I said, we think of it as you said, we think of it as extreme athletes being in that flow state. They take off from the jump on the ski hill and they're in that flow state.
Yeah.
But it's not something we naturally think of as being systems and bottom line or even at the softer skills level. It doesn't seem to have a natural connection. Tell us how you came to put it into leadership and how somebody they can recognize themselves being in it, but transferring it, which I'm guessing you're talking about, is having the people in your organization be in that state. Talk to us about that, if you would.
Yeah, so if I can back up a little bit. So at the age of 8, I read Omar Bradley's biography of World War II. And it really piqued in me a question. Why was he successful as a leader when others maybe weren't? So that was kind of a thread of this question of why are certain leaders effective and others not. Fast forward, I'd been in the military. I'd gotten out of the military, was doing coaching in an organization, and decided I really wanted to get my coaching certification. So I started looking for coach training schools. Came across one called the Newfield Network, which is a theory called ontological coaching, which ontological coaching looks how we show up as human beings. And if you think about it, it all kind of starts to make sense. Ontological coaching looks at fundamentally 3 things. We use language. Language is our most fundamental tool as humans. You and I are in language now. We're always in language. But they also looked at 2 other things, moods and emotions, with moods and emotions being a predisposition to action, and the body, because we are not brains on a stick. We're a body.
Yes.
So when you take ontological coaching, which is a very powerful methodology, and then when I saw flow, I was like, oh my God, here's flow, the state that we really are driving for. And in ontological coaching, here's the methods to get there. Because the thing from an ontological coaching perspective is you can practice it. I can actually practice having effective conversations. I can practice effective moods and emotions, right? People think, oh, I just have the moods and emotions. No, we have them because we've practiced them. Mm-hmm. If I've practiced resignation and resentment my whole life, I'm going to be good at it.
Damn right.
Right? But if I practice ambition, optimism, joy, I'm going to be good at it. So the premise is, as a leader, my job is to, first of all, coach me. I'm my biggest challenge.
Yes.
If I show up, if I find flow, if I'm at my best, it's going to be so much easier to bring it out in others. And so really, that's how we bring it all together is flow is great, but what if I don't know how to get there? Mm-hmm. So what are the practices that I can start to do on a daily basis to find flow? And that's what's beautiful about it, because really, if I want to find flow, what I really am following is my body and moods and emotions. What brings me alive? And that's where leadership and flow come together. And that's really my search is how do we as leaders have the conversations to bring out the best in our teams and organizations?
But there again, one of the pieces that we do in our work is around what we call mood management.
Mm-hmm.
And mood management is number one, of course, is awareness, is recognizing what mood you're in or what emotion is coming up. But you said something that I think we can't skip over, and that is, if you've been, certainly not consciously, but unconsciously practicing being pissed off for 40 years for the majority of your time, or being disappointed, or being resentful, or whatever it is that you've been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it might be, practicing being joyful, practicing being grateful, practicing being ambitious and anticipatory, or whatever it might be, that's the scale is very heavily weighed on one side. Yeah. So the person who's listening to this might think, this is a nice theory, but I can't put in 40 years of practice on being positive or being, whatever it was, joyous, happy, grateful, versus feeling resentful, angry, or whatever, disappointed even,
Well, and the challenge was strong moods and emotions. The mood of resentment. I tell people the two most common moods I see in organizations are resentment and resignation.
Yes.
And resignation shows up as a rational excuse of why things can't change. And so generally, if somebody's saying that, they're already in a mood.
Yes.
And the sad part about resignation is a lot of times the path is right in front of somebody, but the mood is so overwhelming, they don't want to take action. And so one of the ways a lot of times we'll coach people is when they're in strong moods and emotions, where we tend to go is to the mind, and I got to think through this. Mm-hmm. But that can be a trap, because I'm going to be thinking through something in the mood that created it. So the way we do it is actually get people in their bodies.
Yes.
And start practicing something in your body. So for instance, I can practice being open in my body. But if I've never done it, this is going to feel very vulnerable and very scary. So a lot of times the moment somebody practices, their body goes, nope, I'm taking over. Mm-hmm. I'm not letting you do something because I'm scared. Mm-hmm. So it is hard, but the flip side is, if you start practicing the new behaviors, they actually can come fairly quickly. But yeah, it can be tough. And that's what's so funny is I'll be in an organization and we'll be talking about moods of resignation and resentment, and they're so far into the resignation and resentment that they don't even want to really take action. Mm-hmm. So they sit in that downward spiral and just keep going and going and going. So a lot of times you have to, in a sense, shake the status quo, which a lot of people don't like that. So they got a vested interest in the old way.
Well, I mean, and again, that brings me to my next point, which is, in 30 odd years of doing what I do, one thing I'm absolutely certain of is that when somebody says things have got to change, they don't include themselves in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
We just want all the benefits of change, but I really don't want to do the heavy lifting.
Well, no, I want things to change as long as I don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this, you're a consultant. I've been brought into organizations where they say this has got to change, and I go, well, it's got to start with you. Well, I'm fine.
Yeah. It's not me. Yeah.
It's not me.
I've had organizations tell me, we need you to teach accountability to our people. And my question is, why aren't you holding them accountable? Well, because if an organization doesn't have accountability, I know where it starts, right? But, back to your point about change, it's interesting. I love going to a gym around the first week of January.
Packed.
Because it's packed, right? And you'll see the people that really aren't committed to that change, because they're going to spend their time kind of half, doing their exercise or talking to somebody. It's those that are committed to change that they're out there every day doing the practice. So if I see somebody who's in great physical shape, I do know one thing: they've practiced. Mm-hmm. And if I see somebody that's a great leader, I do know one thing: they've practiced.
But again, back to your point here, I think we've got to get this home very early on in the show, this word practiced, because using your analogy, I've been a bodybuilder for 40 years. Mm-hmm. And I did a video about this a long time ago. And there was a guy in the gym, he would be there every time I was there. And this guy's body looked like it was defrosting.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it was just, it was not looking good. And the guy was there every time I was there, and he was there for as long as I was there, and he was practicing doing what didn't work.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. So you don't get to claim I'm practicing without checking your results, because you may be practicing. Like I know for years I practiced disappointment. I was getting really good at disappointment. I was masterful at it. You know, like Richard Bendler said, disappointment takes a lot of rehearsal. So this is a lot of the time we're practicing what doesn't work, and we're not even aware that we're doing that. And there's that pre-setup, as you talked about, in a mood. You know, this is probably not going to work out, or this is probably going to go awry, or she is probably going to flare up. So, it's one thing to recognize that. Then we go, okay, I recognize I'm practicing what doesn't work. I need to practice something that doesn't work. Okay, what do I need to practice? Okay, then I got to measure results. That's the next level of it. And then how do you keep, because one of the things, you know this as well as I do from our previous conversation, which is contempt just from familiarity. So people go, I see that guy I saw at the gym who was working out and wasn't changing. I'm sure what he was doing worked great for him for a first 3 months, but he never upgraded.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons I think coaching is such a powerful methodology. It's a second set of eyes. I've been known as a coach, a lot of times I'll call BS on people.
Yeah.
And I don't do it in a manner which is degrading. I just say, it doesn't add up to me. Using your analogy, you say you're going to the gym and you've been doing it for a year, but I'm not seeing any results. So are you going to the gym to work out, to take your body to the next level physically, or maybe it's something else? Maybe it's social. Maybe you just like the routine. But you've got to be open to really take it to the next level. One of my best friends is taking up triathlons, and I've done some triathlons. I'm more of a runner, but it's interesting. He is all in. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, and he's like, I'm a vegan now. And I said, oh my God. He said, no. He said, I'm so committed to this. And it shows, and I guarantee you, he could outperform me in every triathlon. It's because he's more committed than I am. Yeah. Now, this isn't about a comparison about he's right, I'm wrong. It's just that's a thing. If you're going to be an effective leader, it takes work. Yeah. And it's a practice that you've got to get good at. And one of the skills of a leader is the ability to be open and to listen. And that's a skill you can practice to get feedback that maybe you're not as good a leader as you think.
Yeah. That happened for you, right? In our previous conversation, you talked about that awakening to the kind of leader you'd been versus the kind of leader you are. Can you tell us a little bit about that awakening?
Well, for me, it was just, I remember when I started down this process of learning, I showed up for this training, and I remember there was a lot of somatic work, working with the body, and I looked around going, what the heck is going on here? What does this have to do with leadership? But fortunately for me, I didn't have a choice to back out. And I was there, and it dawned on me, I was like, wow, there's something powerful going on here. And that's where I really kind of got the idea that leadership isn't about leading others. Ultimately, it's about leading myself.
Absolutely.
I'm my biggest challenge, because I had lots of assessments and, I'm perfect this way, I'm right this way. And those were my blind spots. Right. So that's really where I've started to go, okay, so what is the feedback around me telling me? And I can only see what I can see, right? I'm blind to stuff still to this day. And one of the best places for me to learn about being a leader is being a parent.
Oh, yeah.
Man, my kids hold me to a standard, and it's one of those, Dad, you said not to yell and you're yelling. Oh, God, and that's a place. Am I open to that? Or am I just caught up in my old story, my old way of being? And that's what I'm going to do because, it's gotten me this far.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. You wrote this book, Perfectly Squared, and you decided to write it as a novel or novella. Yeah. What you're talking about here doesn't seem to be, it seems to be technical. Do this, do that, then do this, then do that, then do this. And you decided to put it in a form in the book that was a story. Tell us about why you chose to put it in a story.
So I have one of my an associate who he's one of those guys when he walks in the room, he's brilliant. I mean, and he just when you hear him talk, you go, God, he's brilliant. I don't really know what he's saying, but he's brilliant, right? And
I don't know what he's saying, but he's brilliant. Okay, I like
yeah,
it.
he just sounds it. And he wrote this book on strategy, and we had a mutual client. And I went into the client's office one day, and he said, oh, yeah, I got the book. He said, I read 5 pages, and I said, what the heck is he talking about? And it really stuck with me because I said, I don't want to write a book that people go, oh, yeah, I read your book. And Patrick Lencioni wrote the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team, and I read it. And one of my clients was like, oh, I love that book because it was very simple. Mm-hmm. It's a story, and it kind of clicked for me. I was like, you know what? I know some brilliant people, but I don't really want to hear 400 pages of them talking. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I want to take my methodology and put it into something that, one, it's got great concepts, but 2, the story keeps you going, I want to find out what happens in the next chapter. Right. And so I really wrote it. I was very explicit. I want this to be a book that you could read on a flight from Denver to Detroit, and you finish the book and you're like, oh my God, we're landing in Detroit. Right. And you walk out going, okay, I'm aware of some things I wasn't aware of, and I've got some steps I can start taking. So it's been great. The feedback's been great, and it was fun. And the irony was, it wasn't necessarily hard to write because what I did is I just wrote about clients. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the characters are clients and people I've worked with. I was like, oh, I know that guy. So it was fun. And hopefully for people, it's just enough to wet your whistle to go, okay, there's more here. Now I got to dig deeper. And this just starts that process.
Yeah, it was a great book and I really enjoyed it. And particularly there were several things that stood out for me. And going back to the whole mood thing was this thing put forward, which was the right conversation, but the wrong mood. Yeah. Or is it the wrong conversation with the right mood? Tell us a little bit about that, because I think is going to be intriguing for people.
Yeah, that quote is from Julio Alaya, who is the founder of the Newfield Network. He's one of the kind of the fathers of the modern coaching movement. And he always used to say, the right conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. Mm-hmm. And for people, that's hard to sometimes fathom. But one, we're always in a mood.
Yes.
And so if I have a conversation, I love it. I'll see leaders say, I don't know why nobody comes into my office. I have an open door policy.
Yeah. Really? That force field, the door may be open, but the force field is locking them out.
Yeah. And so I was just dealing with a client last week, and the person was saying, I want to give him feedback, but I want to give it to his whole team because I don't want him to think that there's, he's doing something wrong. And my question was, is he doing something wrong? And the answer was yes. And I said, you can have that conversation, but do it in a mood, not I'm going to beat you down, I'm going to make you feel bad. I want to give you feedback because I want you to succeed.
Right.
But again, it goes back to, as leaders, if I don't have that capacity to know how to have that conversation, I can't have the conversation. That's why I've got to practice moods and emotions. And you've all seen it. I've seen organizations, the boss is in one of those moods today.
Of course.
Somebody needs to tell the boss, do you realize you're telling your entire organization by how you show up that we can't have conversations today?
But I think that, again, you brought up something important, and I touched on it a few minutes ago, which is mood management. The problem with mood management is mood awareness. Mm-hmm. Most people, even I know very aware people who don't realize they're in a shitty space in the moment they're in a shitty space. Yeah. And I think that part of great leadership is building an environment where the hierarchy can slip long enough to allow somebody to come in and say, hey, Croft, hey, Dove, you realize you're a bit off today?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I was feeling kind of cranky this morning, but I thought it was okay now. No, you're coming across a bit pissy. Oh, okay, thanks for letting me know. I mean, I have people around me who will do that, but I know that a lot of leaders don't. That intimidation factor, if we're a leader, we're likely an A-type personality. We're likely dominant anyway. Mm-hmm. And you need somebody who you can empower to step forward and say, I need you, this is the term I've used, I need you to be my mood whisperer.
Okay. Yeah, I love that.
Right? You just be my mood whisperer. And you have full permission to go, even if the mood's great, whatever it is, but just to keep my awareness around it. Yeah. How do you train a leader to become that aware about themselves?
Yeah, it is. For some, it's more difficult. It's like athletic ability. Some have more, some have less.
Yeah.
One of the things, like I said, a lot of times I'll coach to the body. Mm-hmm. So I have a client that one of his practices in meetings is to sit with his hands underneath the table, completely relaxed. Now, why are we doing that? Well, think about it. If I'm going to be angry, the first place somatically I will go is my hand. Right? So if my hand is relaxed, I cannot be angry. And so it's funny because when we first started doing it, I would watch him in the meetings and you could just see his tension starting to rise, and I'd go. And it was kind of like this mood of, oh God. But he would do it, but slowly what would happen is his mood would start to change. Mm-hmm. Because it's the body. And I always tell people the body is the holy grail in leadership. Because the body will trump everything. Mm-hmm. And as an example, you're walking down the street, there's a loud explosion. Your body will take over long before you can, and neuroscience has proven this, right? Yeah. You'll be standing 10 feet away, moving away from. So the body is part of a system. It's the limbic system. It's part of the brain. It's connected. We're not separate. But we have most of our sensors for the brain are where? Our eyes, our fingers, our heart, our stomach. Yeah. How often as a leader, people know this, I get a pit in my stomach.
Sure.
Or I don't feel good in my chest. So what we start to do is learn that through practice to create an awareness where now all of a sudden, I learned this from me. My dad, when my dad would get mad, I could tell he would grit his teeth. Mm-hmm. And it's funny when you get my brothers or I together. My older brother has kids also. When he would yell at his kids, guess what he'd do? He'd grit his teeth. I get
modeled for him. Yeah.
What I've learned is if I can learn to relax my jaw, I can't be angry.
Right.
And so, and also just the awareness of, oh wow, I'm getting tension. I need to learn to relax that. Just that awareness does two things. One is it physically relaxes my body, but the second, it takes me out of the story.
Yeah.
Because we create these stories. Oh, they did this to me, and I'm all mad. I'm looking for all the reasons they did this to me because I'm in a mood. But if I learn to relax, all of a sudden, oh yeah, that's a story. Get out of the story. How do I want to show up? What conversation is going to be the most? I think it was Nelson Mandela talked about how when he was in prison in South Africa, he realized if he left prison angry, then he was still in prison.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to leave all of the anger and all the pain in prison. And I'm going to walk out with love and caring. And I don't know about you, but I know I've heard of Nelson Mandela, right? And the effect he had was because he mastered himself, but he learned to leave those strong moods and emotions behind and showed up. I had one of my favorite leaders in the military talked about love. And people were like, you can't talk about that. Yeah, I can. Because I love you guys. I love my soldiers. I love this organization. I love my country. And that's how I'm going to lead, not from anger, from hate, from whatever it is. And it's an amazing thing when we can master ourselves and really understand our moods and emotions in our body.
But, you brought up something else that is foreign to the world of leadership in traditional ways, which is love. One of the people who impacted me enormously was M. Scott Peck. M. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled, was a military psychiatrist who said, I cannot help people I do not love. And I was trained as a therapist and went, oh my God, this is fantastic, because it agreed. Like, I had argued with my instructors who told me I had to be emotionally distant. And I went, how do you help people you don't care about? And here's, what I loved about it was a military psychiatrist. Psychiatrist on its own kind of scary that a psychiatrist would say it because they're so off versus a therapist. They're distant and objective and tell me more, but don't give anything. And then add to that who's a military guy who's like, oh, this is amazing. And I've built my entire practice and everything I've done, my one-on-one coaching, my one-on-one mentoring, my working with companies, all based on, if I don't fall in love with you, we ain't working together.
Yeah. It's amazing stuff. Yeah. When you think about the whole premise of leave emotions at home.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Because the problem is, one, so if I'm going to leave emotions, that means I'm going to leave passion.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave all of these positive emotions. And we know with the body, you can't I'm going to just have these emotions, because negative emotions do serve a purpose.
Of course they do.
Resentment is, I was treated unfairly. The problem becomes, if that's how I operate, it can serve me, but I've got to learn to let those go. And the other thing I always think is interesting, the research has proven we can't not be emotional.
No.
We're always in a mood and an emotion. And so to say, leave it at home, actually what they're saying is numb your emotions.
Yeah. Become a robot, lose your humanity, and we're dead in the water. Because, when you look at any system, any strategy, anything you want, behind it is people.
Yeah.
And if you're not dealing with people who all have emotions, then you're asking everybody to show up as a robot. And this is dramatically a problem. This then translates over, because let's say you've got a leader, Croft, that you're working with, and you're helping them to have this conscious awareness around their moods and managing their moods, and not repressing, but managing and being aware of. They naturally are going to be in conversation with people who are unconscious of their moods, unconscious of their behaviors, and to use a term that you talked about in your book, which is the conversational currency is a little off.
Yeah.
So for the leader who is watching, listening to us and saying, all right, I've been practicing this. I've done pretty good. I'm doing okay with this, but I have to deal with these nincompoops who are just emotional messes. They're losing their temper. They're screaming. They're shouting. Or more familiar, they're just shut down.
Yeah.
And being emotionally dead. What's your guidance to that leader?
So one, in using your phrase, like if a leader says those nincompoops, that already tells me he or she's in a mood. And it's frustration.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing I love about moods and emotions, I always tell people when I go into organizations, I look at two things. Actually, three things. Conversations they're having, the moods and emotions I see, and the body. But it's all intertwined, because moods and emotions tells me what's possible. So if you're in a mood of resentment, it's telling me I can't get a lot out of Dove right now, because he's got resentment. His whole focus is getting this solved, whatever it is. But if I can help him get out of that mood, I just opened up all of his skills. And so really what we're doing, if I'm open to studying moods and emotions, is I'm opening up potential. But the challenge is, if I'm uncomfortable with strong moods and emotions, what do? I pull back.
Of course.
I hold back and I go, I can't do that, and I avoid it. And so nothing gets solved. So really, the biggest challenge I have, it goes back to, is me. I've got to get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. But that's where the beauty, that's where the potential comes from. Going back to flow, the flow cycle, which through the research they've kind of realized that there's fundamentally a cycle that happens in flow. There's a struggle, there's release, there's flow, there's recovery. But it's the struggle that opens up flow.
Yes.
So a lot of times that greatness is almost there, but a person's struggling with it. This is getting in the way. They don't know how to get around it. So as a leader, if I can help them see that and let go of that, boom, now they're in flow. And so struggle actually is a powerful place.
Absolutely.
Because if they weren't struggling, one of the clues it would be telling, maybe they don't care.
Right.
They don't have any skin in the game. But if I'm getting strong moods and emotions, even if they're negative, it means they care about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because we only have strong moods and emotions about stuff we care about.
Absolutely.
So my wife, my kids have produced very strong emotions for me. It's because I care about
them. Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. If I get an employee that's frustrated, my job is to go, what are you frustrated with? And let me help you. How can I help remove the barriers or just get you to come back? That's my job as a leader, to get that person back in the game doing what they do best. And again, the whole premise of leadership flow. My job is to just find flow, help people find flow so that they can go back and go, oh my God, I love this. I'm having fun. My energy's here. I'm committed.
But let's go to the second part of the question, which is dealing with, because we have an epidemic of this, dealing with the shut down person.
Yeah.
So, we tend to see the extremes. The person who is an emotional mess constantly, or the person who is shut down. So I don't do moods. I don't do emotions. I'm here to work. I know what I got to do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make cold, hard decisions, and that's all there is to it. I know what's really going on. Me as a leader, I know what's going on. But getting that person to shift, to even become aware that it's possible to go to express emotions. What do you say to a leader who says, listen, I'm dealing with this team member, great person, does great work, but I'm dealing with a stone. There's nothing there emotionally. I know there is, but I don't know how to get it out. I certainly don't know how to get that person into a flow state because they won't access emotions.
Right. Well, one of the questions or one of the conversations we have to start having is about, what do people care about?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do you really care about? I'll give you a quick example. I work a lot with industrial type settings, and one of my clients is a coal mine, and it's an age-old problem in real rough and tough environments, that getting people to wear their safety equipment.
Yeah.
And so I was working with some safety guys, and they said, we can't get people to wear safety glasses. I said, well, let's try this. And so I went up to a guy who wasn't wearing his safety glasses, and you could tell he kind of knew, like, oh, the beating is going to happen. And I said, hey, introduced myself. We started talking. I said, hey, can I ask you a question? Do you have a family? He said, yeah, I got a wife, kids. We started talking about them. We talked about mine. And then I said, there's a reason I brought that up. I said, do you love your kids? And he said, of course I do. I said, yeah, I know you do. He said, the reason I'm going to ask you to wear your safety glasses is not because I'm a jerk, not because of a rule. It's because of your kids. And the reason is, I want you to go home and see them tonight. And so would you be willing to wear your safety glasses, not for me, not for the rule, but for your kids? And here's my request to you. And this guy and I made a pact that if ever we saw one another without safety glasses, we would immediately go up and reference this conversation and say, wait, we had a commitment. And every time I saw that guy, he had his safety glasses on. And it was different. And it was not because I was this great person, but because, one, I talked about what he cared about.
Yep.
And two, I did it in a mood of love and caring, not you're going to do it because I told you you're going to do it. Right? And it's that compliance versus commitment.
Absolutely.
Would you rather have an organization that is compliant to all the rules around safety, or completely committed to safety? Right? Yeah. And I want commitment. I want people that are going, I'm doing it because it's the right thing. And that goes back to, that's a mood, that's a conversation, and it's, to quote Julio Alay again, it's, in this case, paraphrase, it's the right mood in the right conversation, or the right conversation in the right mood gets the effect. Yeah. Because I could have that same conversation with the guy and could have beat him or her up, and yeah, they would have put their glasses on, but it would have been out of compliance.
Yeah.
So you have to operate from care. What do people care about? And you know what? At the end of the day, we all kind of care about the same thing.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
Family, the people we love, the good life, laughing with friends, holding a baby. That's what we all care about.
Sure.
And so when we realize there's a leader that cares about that too. Oh, right. And think about, you've met leaders that you would die for.
Of course.
And at the end of the day, it's because they cared about you. And you knew that. Even when they had you do things which you didn't want to do, or they said things which you at the time triggered you. This isn't fair. They did it because they cared.
Absolutely.
That's what leadership is. And the more we have those conversations, the more flow is going to happen.
Yeah. One of my central philosophies is leadership is a ship of sailing in an ocean of love.
Yeah.
And when you get that leadership is a ship that sails in an ocean of love, it works. But when you think leadership is a tank going through a wall, you will get, as you said, you will get compliance, you will get surrender, but you will never get peace.
Yeah.
You'll never get buy-in. You'll get people who just go along because I have to pay the rent. And so it's a very important conversation.
The definition I use and people that I work with use is leadership is the authority granted to an individual by their followers.
Absolutely.
So only a follower can make you a leader.
Yeah.
And that's a choice, either conscious or unconscious, we could debate. But fundamentally, people look at you and go, that's a person I see a good future with, or that's a person I don't see a future with.
Right.
And if I don't see a future with them, they may have management authority, which management authority is the authority granted to an individual by the organization. I'm going to do it because my boss said I had to.
Yeah, of course.
Versus I'm going to do it because it's the right thing, or even more powerful, because I want to help my boss out. I want him or her to succeed.
Because they're invested.
My wife has an amazing boss that she worked with, and that the two of them, I've learned a lot of this just watching them. Because my wife would absolutely run through buildings for that person.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife knows it's also reciprocated.
That's the thing.
And so she knows that she can trust this person. It's amazing. And that's really what we're striving for is I want people to follow me because they want to, not because they have to.
Yeah. One of the things that you focused on in the book was looking at vision, but from a different way than it's traditionally looked at.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
So it's really, visioning the future is not about, okay, we're going to have, 10% sales growth, or we're going to be it's how do we want people to feel? And that's a vision, imagine if you could, I want to be 5 years down the road with this team, and I want everybody to love their job. I want them to be doing great work where they feel like they're contributing. I want them to feel like this is an organization I want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what I have. It's behaviors. The other stuff is important, right? But that's not what really creates great teams.
No.
It's when they go, I see a future here, and this is where I want to be. I can be anywhere else, but I choose to be here because of how I feel, because of how my leaders treat me, and this is the place I want to be. So that's really what I want people to look at is vision of the future goes back to kind of moods and emotions, right? And think about Super Bowl was just, yesterday. Think about the concept of all those ads. They're not trying to sell you products. They're trying to make you feel.
Sure.
And when you resonate with an ad that, oh man, that's the company I want to do work with. That's what all those, some are over the top and some are getting to the point where they're trying too hard. But when it really resonates with somebody, that person goes, that's my organization. That's
I think we forget that we are emotional beings. We forget that all the time. And that's when we get into trouble. When we remember that, we've all seen shows that have come out, movies, and you go, I'm so excited to see it because the special effects look amazing. And you go see it and you don't care. Yes, they spent $100 million on special effects, but you don't care about the characters. And then you watch a show like This Is Us, which is, as a big masculine guy, I've managed to not cry once. Every episode I've cried.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because I give a shit. I care about the characters. And moreover, and I think this is profoundly important, for me, this is my role as a leader, and it's the one that I guide other leaders around. I've said, in my work as a leader and guiding other leaders, I was asked once, what makes you good at what you do? And my answer was simply this. I've never met anyone who isn't a reflection of me. I'm willing to see myself in you, even in your shittiness and in your glory. And that reminds me of my humility. It reminds me to if I'm not there now, I probably was at some point, and I might be at some point in the future. And that means I care about you. So it's not just eliciting what somebody cares about, but the willingness to have the compassion to move into the place of seeing yourself in that person. So I care about the characters because I see a reflection of myself in the characters. And when a leader steps into leadership in that place, it is profound what happens.
Yeah.
But leaders often make themselves separate, better, or different.
Yeah. And you touched it goes back to moods and emotions. It's love.
Absolutely.
And love is, we're on a leadership podcast. How dare us talk about love? I have yet to find a more powerful mood and emotion than love. I know it would cause me to jump in front of a bus in a heartbeat if somebody I loved was, and maybe even somebody I don't love, don't know. But that's the power of love, but it's so hard a lot of times in organizations to talk about that, because it doesn't add to the bottom line. It's with that touchy feely stuff. We don't have time for that. We got stuff to do. And okay, good luck with that, because the great organizations I've met care. They talk about what they care about. Great leaders do that.
My man, we're close to the end of time, and I want to ask you if you could nudge our leaders along, our listeners, our viewers, and have them do one thing in the next 24 hours or the next 5 working days, something practical that they could do that will make them a better leader in the context of what you were talking about, what would you have them do?
It sounds very simple, but it's breathe. And when I mean breathe, slow, deep breaths. Mm-hmm. And be aware of your breathing. A lot of the research in flow, what they find is the truly great at what they do in the moment are breathing normal. It's because they're calm. They're completely connected to their body. And I say breathe because what we're finding is people, yes, you've been breathing for 52 years, whatever yes, but you may not have been breathing correctly.
Right.
And so it's a practice, because think about what happens when we breathe. One, we're slowing down our body. We're getting oxygen to parts of our body that it may not have been getting to. Mm-hmm. And so that is a lot of times the most simple thing I'll do with coaching or in conversations is breathing / centering. Yeah. Come to a place of choice. And breathing is a great tool to start, and people think, it can't be that simple. Well, try it. Mm-hmm. Try breathing 5 deep breaths 5 times a day, or right before you go to a meeting. And we all know this. You're about to go on stage for something. What do? All right, relax, breathe.
Yeah.
And just that simple act. And that is a practice that we can do. But there's one theory is that we need about 3,000 repetitions to get where we can be somewhat competent at something. Well, if I do it 5 times a day, 5 days, that's only 25 times a day. Do the math. It's going to take 3-4 months just to get good at it.
Right.
So again, it goes back to a practice. So practice breathing, practice being. The other thing I would just add with that is then comes gratefulness. What am I in gratitude about? Mm-hmm. That's where breathing can just bring us back to, okay, what am I thankful for right in this moment? And it can be as simple as I'm thankful that I have a breath. Yeah. Because I know people that would trade everything they've got to be able to breathe.
Oh, absolutely.
In the moment.
Absolutely.
So
it's great stuff, my man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Great time.
Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you, the name of your book, where they can find the book, and the resources that you offer, because I know you've got lots.
Well, the great thing about the name Croft is there's not a lot of Crofts out there, as you probably have with Dove, right?
Exactly.
So you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn at Croft Edwards, Facebook at Croft Edwards. The book, you can find LeadershipFlowthebook.com, and my website is CroftandCompany.com. But the beautiful thing, again, just Google Croft Edwards. I'm pretty sure I'm somewhere at the top because I don't know of anybody else.
Yeah,
so
you're going to find other Croft Edwards about as often as you find Dove Barons.
Yeah, see, so it's just at the end of the day, if you can't find me, I don't think you're trying very hard. Because
you might be in avoidance.
Yeah, I think
you may be in a mood of avoidance.
Yeah, I didn't have much trouble finding Dove Baron because I didn't, there wasn't 37 different Dove Barons. No. So yeah, same thing. So just come find me and love to have a conversation. And the book's available kind of anywhere you buy books.
Well, it's been great. And like I said, I really enjoyed the book and I highly recommend it. And I highly recommend that people listen back to the show. And please share the show with other people. There's a lot of valuable stuff here. Don't just have it on in the background. Stop, take notes, pay attention, reach out to Croft. Get the book. Like you said, it's a short novel that really lays it out beautifully. I enjoyed reading it. It's as you said, it's an aeroplane book. I often say that I like to write now, not before, but now I like to write for America's Library. Do you know where America's Library is?
No.
It's the smallest room in the house.
Yeah. Well, I've told people this. The great thing about the book is it's in chapters, and you can get a chapter a day kind of thing. Yeah, so 24 days later, you're done.
You can get a chapter of bowel movement, as I like to say.
Yeah, there you go.
Because we're all so damn busy, and we're trying to get things. And this is easy to consume, what I like about reading in chapters, the way I did it too, was I'm going to go away and think about that and mull that over, and I like that. So it's great stuff. Each
chapter kind of sets up the next one. Well, what's going to happen next? So
exactly.
Hopefully you enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. So thank you for joining us. I want to thank you, dear listener, dear viewer, for being part of this, and make sure that you do reach out to Croft and let him know what you got out of the show. Let him know how it's impacted you. Let him know what you're going to do with it. And again, make sure you get the book. And remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing top talent, but they're also losing them at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent only to have them leave you before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into your purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. And remember, get yourself over to the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, to get your authentic leadership matrix assessment tool. It's absolutely free and assesses you in the 5 areas of leadership. Again, you don't need a www. Just matrix, like the movie, .fullmontyleadership.com. I'm Dov Barron, I'm your host, and I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can tap into flow by finding, recognizing, and taking hold of your moves. Till next time, this is Dov Barron. I'm out.